Hello everyone, this is Joshua Spodek, and we're here for the second of 3 videos on the model, my model for the human emotional system. And so far we covered models in general and the passive view of models, what I call the passive view, which is to recognize that we have models, we have beliefs about how the world is, and they filter how we perceive things. So after seeing that we have models and beliefs, the next step is how to use them. We can actively choose our models. That's going to be the main message here in this video, even for things that we feel fixed on. So a lot of times we feel the world is just the way it is and there's nothing we can do about it. But if we develop these skills about understanding the human emotional system and our emotional system in particular, we can do something about it. This is the main way to become a cathedral builder. This is the main way to be like the third stonemason, or to be able, like Jean-Dominique Bauby, dealt a very tragic blow in life, was able to make his life about things that he enjoyed and liked. Same with Viktor Frankl. In a very difficult situation, he was able to find meaning and value and purpose and importance in his life. And same with Mark Zupan. None of them had superhuman abilities. It's something that you can do yourself. So the next stage is recognizing that we have these beliefs, doing something about it actively. I believe that this is Viktor Frankl's greatest message. When he wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." He says attitude and way, but I believe he's talking about the same thing about your perspective of how you see the world, your beliefs, your mental models. When we are no longer able to change a situation, just think of an incurable disease such as inoperable cancer, we are challenged to change ourselves. So when the world comes to you in a way that you can't do anything about, that doesn't stop that you can change your perception of these things, which amounts to changing your beliefs. I think that's one of the main ways to become a cathedral builder, one of the main ways that to handle when life gives you big challenges, instead of something makes you miserable, if you can't change that thing, it gives you the ability and the responsibility to ask yourself, do I want to be miserable or would I like to be happy? And being able to change your mental models is one of the main ways to do that when you can't change the outside world. And together with changing the outside world, it gives you incredible tools as a leader. Oh, and it's a human freedom. You don't need cancer or Nazis or paralysis like the writers that I talked about in the last video did to reveal this in yourself. You have the ability already. You don't need it to be revealed. And the way to do that, I believe, is to develop these skills, to increase your self-awareness through knowing about your emotional system, the human emotional system, and your emotions in general. The active use says not just to be aware, that you can be aware of different beliefs, but that you can actively and deliberately choose yours, which means changing how you see reality. Remember, we talked about the pit bull. If you don't even have the active view of mental models, of beliefs, and you think a dog is cuddly and adorable and friendly, you think that's the way the animal is. Nothing I can do about it. That's just the way things are. That's the truth. That's reality. Nothing to be done about that. Now, the passive view says that things may be how they are, but there's something in between you and them, and that's this perception. So the perception is separate from the dog. It may be cuddly, adorable. You have a belief that that's the case. The active view goes one step further, and it says that these models and beliefs are something about you, inside you. You perceive that they're cuddly, adorable, and friendly and playful. What difference does that make? You can change your perception. By putting it on you, it gives you abilities to do things. Now, you can't change everything. You can change some things, though. And that's what we're going to work on here. And the more that you do this, I think the more that you'll find yourself able to. If you and I are both in the same situation, but you're happy and I'm miserable, to the extent that we have similar abilities and similar backgrounds, it could be that my beliefs are causing my misery. So say you and I went into a party together. Say we're very similar people, and we have similar backgrounds and similar abilities. And we walk into the party, and say I believed that this was a party for meeting lots of people. So it was going to be a social event for talking. And you believed it was going to be a party for dancing. And we get there and we walk in the door and the music's really, really loud, and so loud that it's really hard to talk. But great music for dancing. Then you might feel really happy and I might feel really miserable. So if I walk into that situation and I'm miserable and I can't change the volume of the music, and say for some reason I can't leave the party, I have the choice. If I stick with this is supposed to be a party for talking and I can't talk, then I'm going to be miserable and annoyed. One thing I could do is I could ask you, you don't seem to be miserable. How come you're so happy? How come you're enjoying yourself? And you might say, because I came here to dance and I get the chance to dance. And maybe I didn't think to dance. And I hear your belief. I might think, oh, I should adopt your belief. If I change my belief from this should be a party for dancing, for talking, into should be a music for, this is a party for dancing, then maybe I'll start dancing too and have a good time. If you walk in and you believe things are just the way they are, and the way you see things is the way they are, then when you walk in and think this party's lame, then you're kind of stuck. You think this party's lame, nothing I can do about it. in the situation I talked about last time with the engagement manager, my friend who was going to Mexico City, it's at least useful to know that people have different beliefs. In this case, you might say the party just is. Recognizing that passive view might get you something, but the active view is saying you can go one step further, is to say, if I believe that this party is lame, then I can change my beliefs. I don't say you should just change your belief to the opposite of what it is, to say this party's awesome. If you're really not enjoying yourself, it may be very difficult to have a belief this party is awesome when you don't find that it's awesome, but that's not the only belief that you can have. And in fact, one of the things I'll get to later is a more useful way of looking at things is, how can I take responsibility here? So a belief that you might have instead of this party is lame is, I can have fun anywhere, anytime. That's not saying the party isn't lame, but it's putting in the forefront of your mind a new belief. And that belief might put you in a new direction of saying, I wonder how I can have a good time here. Maybe I can do something different than just sitting here in the corner, wallowing in my misery. So that's the active view, is to be able to take on new beliefs consciously and deliberately. The method is going to be how to do that most effectively. This set of videos, these first three, are just talking about the model. I'm also talking about creating flexibility in your beliefs. That creates freedom. The more flexible you are in your beliefs, the more that you can create beliefs that take away your misery, that make you a cathedral builder. But that also means that it gives you a lot of responsibility. If you're miserable and you can do something about it, that's your responsibility to do things about it. You can't blame others or blame circumstances, and that allows you to feel a little better, kind of palliative, but it doesn't improve things. This gives you the ability to improve things. Not everything, but some things. And to the extent that you take these abilities of changing your own mental models, your own beliefs, you'll see how to change others. And that's a big piece of leadership, how to influence others through changing their beliefs. Dwelling in right and wrong, thinking my beliefs are right, and therefore others are wrong, that results in confinement, what I often call mental jails, and being judgmental. If you think you're right, you think someone else is wrong, or you think some other belief is wrong, and being judgmental is, I found, very counterproductive to leading people. If you want to surround yourself in your whole life only with people who agree with you, well, I don't think any two people agree on everything. If you expect to have different people with different values and different abilities and different histories, which is, I think, can happen to you all the time when you work in teams, then being able to work with them is going to be very helpful for you. And recognizing that they have different beliefs and being able to handle those things, sometimes changing your beliefs, is very useful. I also recommend being wary of initial beliefs. I think I said this before, that many people see changing models as putting lipstick on a pig. Like, the way you see it first is that's the real way. Any change is, well, that's just putting lipstick on a pig. But I found that rarely are initial beliefs the best. Nor, for that matter, even if you want to stick with being right, there's not a whole lot of rightness to them either. Getting to look at a situation from many different perspectives gives you the chance to see it from different perspectives and come up with different models and different beliefs and different ways of looking at things, some of which may be the most effective for solving your problem, for getting to the results that you're looking for, or to build relationships. This is an illustration from an ad campaign that some big multinational gave a little while ago. It was to illustrate, they were illustrating how different cultures have different ways of looking at things, but it works here too. Here is a picture of a car and the word status symbols in front. Now, for a lot of people, a car is a status symbol. That's not the only belief that you can have about a car. Here's another one. Some people might look at the exact same car and say that's a polluter. That car pollutes a lot. That's not saying it's not a status symbol. It's just different people have different beliefs, different perspectives of looking at things. Yet another person might look at the same car and say this is freedom. So different people might look at these things and react in different ways based on different ways of looking at things. But the illustration here is that different people look at different things in different ways. There's nothing special here about cars. Just because someone can look at cars differently doesn't mean that we don't look at everything differently. And we do look at everything differently. There's also nothing right or wrong about any of those views. Just because I see it as a status symbol doesn't mean it's not also polluting. Now, the advertiser here is implying that the differences come from different cultures. But you can differ your beliefs for any reason. You can differ them for the outcomes that they lead you to, for whatever reason you want. And you can change your beliefs at different times. If other people can have different beliefs, you can too. And so here's a little exercise. Look around the room you're in right now, or wherever you are. Look at any object and do the same. So if you're sitting watching this on a computer, maybe you have a laptop in front of you. A laptop may be to you something that enables you to connect with lots of people. Other people may look at the same laptop and say, this thing distances myself from other people. It puts something between myself and others. Yet other people may say, that's something expensive. I had to save a lot up for it. Some people might say it's cheap. So different, and then you look at other things. You might look at the shoes you're wearing. Maybe the shoes you're wearing maybe for you they're comfortable. Maybe for someone else they're painful. Maybe for someone else they're fashionable. Maybe for you at one time they're one thing, at another time they're another thing. Now here's something interesting. Look at anything in your life, not just things that you can touch and feel and see, and you can do the same. Think of if you're working for somebody else, if you have a job. Is a job for you something that you do for somebody else? Is it something you do for yourself? Is it something that makes you money? Is it something that takes away your time? There's lots of different ways to look at the same things in different ways. And if you look at the same thing in different ways, you'll change how you perceive it, you'll change how you react, you'll change the people that are in your life. So here's another example. It's a rug. It may be decor. It might be a place of prayer. It might be a souvenir. And there's another way you can look at things. This is looking at the same thing from different models, but you can have different models. You can have the same model for different things. So here's responsibility. From one perspective, responsibility may be fair play in a competitive event. Responsibility may be taking care of the environment. Responsibility may be taking care of a pet. Or here, security. Many people had a little teddy bear to keep them secure at night. Other people's security means having a strong password for their computer. Someone else's security might be having an island where they can escape to. Again, there's nothing special about cars, rugs, responsibility, or security. We all have models for different things. We all have different models. There's nothing wrong or right about any of these views inherently. I don't know, maybe you have access to some book in the sky that says what's right and wrong in an absolute sense, but I'm not aware of such a thing. And in absent such a thing, different people have different views, and each of them may feel right to themselves, but that doesn't mean that others are wrong. Again, the advertiser implies differences come from culture, but the differences didn't come from any reason. So look around. If you look around in the room, you can do different things with different. You can do the same with different objects, also with different abstract things in your life. So here's a few things: your job, relationships. Think of what your relationship with your mother, your father, your sisters, your significant other, or professor, or whoever. If you think of your relationship with your mother as something judgmental, you're going to have one relationship. If you think of it as something where she will always support you, that's another, that will lead the relationship in different directions. But that's true of all relationships that you have. That's what I've found. So you might ask yourself, what preconceived notions are you stuck with? If you don't have the ability to change these things, how can you liberate yourself to look at things in different ways if you choose to? So here's a way of looking at the world that I learned from a professor of mine who knew Jack Welch personally. So Jack Welch was the CEO of GE, and I forget the details, but he was responsible for a huge accumulation of wealth. The share price of GE went up by a lot in his time there. Many people very much liked how he led. Some people disagreed, some people didn't. But what I learned in class was about his gardening model of leadership. So he viewed leaders as like gardeners. So a gardener who grows a vegetable garden doesn't actually sprout the vegetables by themselves. A gardener finds a plot of land, and based on the rainfall and the sunlight, the gardener may choose what seeds to plant, then waters the plants, makes sure that if the weeds start coming in, start taking the weeds away, and lets the plants themselves grow the outcome, the vegetables. And I don't know if you could do this in your head while I was describing it, but if you translate this into people, you could say a leader of a company, of a for-profit company, doesn't produce the products him or herself. Generally, if there's a team, the people do. The leader chooses what market to go in. How do you choosing based on the rainfall and so forth? Is choosing the competitive environment, you choose what market to go into. Then planting the seeds is like hiring the people. Watering is providing them resources. And what my understanding about Jack Welch, he believed one of the biggest things a leader had to do was weeding. The equivalent of weeding was keeping out bureaucracy, keeping out red tape. From one perspective, this is a very effective model. To the extent Jack Welch followed it, he was very successful in business. A lot of people, in particular the shareholders of GE, really liked how much money he made for them. And I understand that the employees that liked working with him loved working with him. Others didn't, but many loved it. Okay, very useful. There's one problem with it. If you evaluate models on rightness or wrongness, it's incredibly wrong. People aren't plants. Not even close. Total different kingdom. The thing is that it's very useful. And if someone came to you and said, hey, here's a model, why don't you, if you're a leader and someone comes up to you and says, here's a model, why don't you try imagining you're a gardener and that people are like plants? And if you say, well, that's terribly inaccurate, people aren't plants. Jack Welch was able to use that model very, very effectively. If you competed with him, you probably lost. Most people did when they competed with him. So do you want to look for accuracy, or do you want to look for effectiveness? People aren't plants, but nonetheless, it's a very effective model. If you're stuck on accuracy, if you're stuck on right and wrong, you're not going to get there, and he's going to be more effective than you. Let's look at another model. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I don't know if you read the book, but it was a very popular book some years ago. For many people, it solved a lot of problems. It enabled people to communicate in ways that they hadn't before. Only men are not from Mars. Women are not from Venus. We're all from Earth. Now, most people reading it, I doubt anyone read it and thought they meant literally, but nonetheless, that's a model that says, men are different than women in certain ways, that are as if they're from different planets. So is it effective? For many people it was. Is it accurate? Terribly inaccurate. Nonetheless. So it's an example here of how to take a more active view. If you think the way that book suggests, for many people, that will create better relationships for them. Maps are another story. Maps are all wrong. They all throw out information in order to make themselves more useful. And if you look at a map and say 1 inch equals 1 mile, that's wrong. I want 1 mile equals 1 mile. You're not going to be able to fold that map up. So maps are very useful for being inaccurate, and you want them to be inaccurate. Politics and religion are filled with models. You're with us or against us is a quote that George Bush said that after the 9/11 attacks. Well, before he said that, it wasn't necessarily the case that everyone was either with or against him. Now, whether you agree with him or not, I believe it was very effective for him to say that, because if you believe him without questioning, without looking at it a lot, you think, well, am I with him or against him? Well, the other side is terrorists. I'm not going to be on that side, so I'm with him. And I believe he probably got a lot of people on his side that wouldn't have otherwise. He created a mental model that a lot of people adopted that was effective. The war on poverty. So in the 60s, they had this war on poverty. Up until then, war by that point was like there were front lines and people with weapons shooting each other. The war on poverty is nothing like that. But wars tend to get presidents elected. And so war on poverty was an effective way of getting votes. Right or wrong, good or bad, I don't know, but it was effective. Would you adopt it? I'm not sure, but it's available there. Someone did, and it was effective for them. Just say no to say that there's a model there that you can say one word and that will resolve a drug problem for you. Maybe it worked for some people, maybe it didn't. It was a model that someone suggested. Creation myths, how the world was created. Every culture, as far as I know, has its own creation myth, and it leads you to see the world in certain ways. Other ones lead other people to see the world in different ways, and we behave accordingly. The past is another example that we don't have direct access to. As soon as a moment passes, it's gone. We have evidence of how things were, and we have memories, but as soon as the past disappears, my memories change, your memories change, and we have different memories of the past. Lawyers who who cross-examine witnesses know that your memories can change a color's car from black to blue, and photographs can show that people's memories are different. And when photographs grow, we have different memories. So we have mental models for what the past is. I'm sure you've gotten into a fight with someone where you remembered something one way, they remembered it another way, and there was no resolution. So you have different models for the past. And for that matter, I hope I don't get too woo-woo here, but when we talk about what the real world is and what reality is, well, that's your belief about a universe that you have limited knowledge of. Others have different memories of different experiences, of different perceptions of the world. The universe stretches on in billions of light years in every direction, and you know some part of it, and they know other parts of it. So the next time someone says to you, the reality is that X, Y, and Z, you know that what they're actually saying is, my belief is that the reality is X, Y, and Z. And also the next time that you say reality is X, Y, and Z, recognize that other people might have had different experiences. And maybe there is one absolute reality. I think there probably is, but my awareness of it and my knowledge of it is particular to me because no one else has had my experience. And so two people are going to have different perspectives about reality, and both of them feel justified, and both of them may be right, but they still may disagree. That doesn't make you right, doesn't necessarily make you wrong. So I want to give them the exercise for you to actively think of how changing your models, changing your beliefs about how something works might be very helpful. So one time I was at a store, office supply store, and I was looking one way, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw there was a big display of paper shredders. There were a couple different groups, and above each group of these paper shredders, there were signs. And the sign above the first group said high speed. And the sign above the second group said standard speed. And now, in my head, before I saw the third one, as I was scanning left to right with my eyes, I hadn't yet seen what was on the sign. I saw that there was a sign, but not yet what it said. So before asking you what that sign said, I want to ask you, what do they value? When you see high speed and standard speed, what are they valuing? Now, you're probably saying speed. You like high speed and don't like low speed. My question to you is, what comes next? If one is high speed, the next is standard speed. Is the next one, I was expecting it to say low speed, and I had this thought in my head of like, why would someone buy low speed? But that's not what came next. The next one said economy. And I think this illustrates that the people who are doing this changed their values. They changed their model for what was important from speed to money. Now, it's not a big deal, but one display displays one belief and another displays another, and it's to everybody's benefit. I think that the customers who are interested in saving money feel better buying something that's economy rather than saying something that's like it's good in one area rather than bad in another. And benefits the store, it benefits the shareholders of the chain store. So I think everybody benefits from this, and the manufacturers of the paper shredders. So why can't you? Why can't you change your perceptions of things, your beliefs of what's valuable and what's not? So for example, you were once younger than you are, and if you're not middle-aged yet, you will be one day. What comes next? Is it old? Some people like being old, but some people don't. Maybe the next one is wise or understanding. I'm not sure. But you have the ability to change your perspective, to adopt a new belief as to what represents you in different times of your life. Or another example is maybe one time you had a job, maybe at another time you didn't. So maybe one time you were hired, maybe you were fired or let off. What's the next step? Unemployed? If you don't want to be unemployed, that doesn't sound so great. It might not make you very happy. It might make you miserable. It might make it harder for you to get your next job. What if freedom was what you had at that point? What if free described you better at that point? Might actually make it easier or more effective for you to get your next job. Or maybe entrepreneur is what you are after that. There's lots of different options. So I don't know if you've ever noticed olives. I think a long time ago they were small, medium, and large. My understanding is that back then no one bought the small ones. So although it was the same olives, they changed the labeling from small, medium, large to medium, large, extra large. And then apparently no one wanted medium, so they made it large, and like extra, extra large. And this kept going on until one time I saw it, and it was large, colossal, and super colossal, which is like a funny way to describe olives. It's not necessarily wrong. And if it leads to people enjoying their olives more, and the olive producers to selling more olives, and the stores to selling more olives, it seems to me that everybody benefits from this new way of looking at things. It's a new model. It's a different belief of how to label olives. And it seems to me to work. And the reason I point out this example is that changing wording changes perception and behavior. How you describe things affects your beliefs. If you say, I can't do X versus I can't do X yet, or if he can do X, so can I, it changes your beliefs of how you, and therefore how you react to things. So changing wording changes perception and behavior. Another example I like here is no pain, no gain. I don't think anybody believes that without pain there's no gain possible. But a lot of us act as if it's true. We act as if we believe it, sometimes because the words are in our heads. So I can't do X versus I can't do X yet, or it's impossible versus I don't know how to do it yet. These can lead to very different ways of looking at things, and they represent different beliefs systems, different beliefs for how to interpret the world. So I want to give you another exercise to think actively about accuracy and rightness being poor criteria for choosing a model. So I'm going to give you a situation. Imagine you wanted to improve something. Which of the models would you prefer of the following? I'm going to give you a list of 5 models. I'm going to pick, I like to do public speaking, and I like to improve my public speaking. So I'll talk about public speaking, but you can imagine it being anything that you want to improve. Maybe leadership, maybe influence, persuasion, sales, getting promoted, stuff like that. One possible model I could have in my head is I'm terrible at public speaking. So that's one you could have. Or whatever you're thinking about improving about yourself, you could be terrible about that thing now. Another model you could have is I'll never be good at public speaking. Another one is public speaking doesn't matter. There are plenty of people who aren't good at something and they say, well, this doesn't matter, who cares? Another belief is others were as bad at me at public speaking, yet still developed excellence in it. Okay, so that's another one. And another one is I will become an excellent public speaker. So when I'm in class, I ask the students, of these 5 models, which would you choose? And I ask them to raise their hands. And I say, how many people pick number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5? Okay, so nobody picks number 1, nobody ever picks number 2, nobody ever picks number 3. And then usually it's like about a third pick number 4 and about 2/3 pick number 5. So they clearly choose beliefs based on something other than accuracy, because let's look at accuracy. The first one is the most accurate. If you actually are terrible at the thing at the time, that's the most accurate of all of these beliefs. The next one is, well, you can make it as accurate as you want. You can never improve at something and make that as accurate as you'd like it to be. But it's, at least at the current time, it has some accuracy. What about the next one? Public speaking doesn't matter. Well, that matters to some, it doesn't matter to others. So it's sometimes accurate. Now let's look at the next one. Others were as bad at me as public speaking, yet still developed excellence in it. This is pretty unknown. So I'd say it's unknown without research. And the last one is purely speculative. The one that people pick the most, the one that's most effective, is the least accurate. We naturally, at certain times, choose beliefs that we know to be inaccurate because we know that they work for us. My point is, in doing this is to reveal that you already do this. If you're listening to me talk about changing beliefs and thinking, you're just changing reality, you're lying to yourself, you already do it. And it works. The question is not, do I do it, but can I do it? How can I do it more effectively? That's my point here. Here's going to be an example of an active view. I don't know if you saw the movie Apollo 13 or if you know the history of what happened, but Apollo 13 was a lunar rocket that was, it launched, and while it was on the way from the Earth to the moon, there was an explosion in the capsule, and they realized that they didn't have the resources to get to the moon. It was an explosion, but didn't kill anyone. So they had 3 astronauts in the lunar lander module on the way to the moon, and the challenge for NASA was to bring them home. So it was a catastrophe on a moon rocket. NASA, the guys back on Earth, were trying to get 3 astronauts in orbit back to Earth safely. Problem after problem kept arising. So the scene you're about to see is, there are 3 characters in it. The press guy, the guy in NASA who talks to the press, is struggling with what to tell them. So here are the 3 NASA characters. There's going to be the guy who talks to the press. That's the person in the middle at the beginning. Then that person is talking to the head, the most senior NASA guy in the room. This is the guy who oversees all of what's going on at NASA, or a very high level. And there's going to be a third person, and that's the head of this particular mission. So he's the one who's doing the most action right now. He's the leader in charge who's doing the most. So I'm going to start the video, and you're going to see the press person saying, look at all these problems. How do I communicate this? And you'll see the reaction from the head NASA person, and then after that, you'll see the reaction from the head of this particular mission.
Copy that.
Is this typhoon still present in the splashdown?
Yeah.
We got the
Okay, here's the press guy,
parachute situation, the heat shield,
the head guy.
angle of trajectory, and the typhoon. There's just so many variables. I'm a little
I know
at a
what the
loss.
problems are, Henry. This could be the worst disaster NASA's ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Totally different perspectives. Imagine you were up in orbit. Which person would you want leading the team to bring you back? All of them had a way of, you couldn't say any of them were wrong, but which would you choose? Which would you want to be chosen? Now, if you were the head mission guy, the guy who said it could be the biggest disaster NASA ever faced, you better hope that person could change his belief before it actually unfolded. Anyway, if you didn't know, they all get back home alive. So it did work out to be NASA's finest hour. Now I want to give you another example. This is evidence of models at work. I didn't make up this list, but I can tell you a bunch of these I've faced. So I'm going to give you some things that people say when faced with someone proposing a new idea. See if you can find the models behind these statements. Because as a leader, oftentimes if you can influence people's models, you can change how they look at things and they may be more amenable to working with you. If you just work with their behavior but not their models, you can't always do that as effectively. So here are some things that you might hear when you propose things if you think and behave entrepreneurially. It's just not right. I can't tell you why. So this person hasn't really spent time looking at it. They're just looking at it superficially. Here's my idea, now do it. I've definitely had managers who have not really listened to my ideas and just said, do it my way. Maybe it was the most effective. I'm just pointing out it's different models for how to look at things. Put it in writing. Definitely had that. Sometimes it's much harder to put stuff in writing, or it can take months to put in writing what could be covered in a 5-minute conversation. Don't ask questions, just follow the rules. You need the approval of 5 unit heads. Why say thank you? It's his job, isn't it? What will the boss think? So I'm hoping you're filling in what models could be behind these statements. Don't rock the boat. We've never done it this way before. I've definitely heard these things. So I want to wrap up, but I want to point out where we are right now. So far, we've covered models and beliefs in general. And the main thing here is that we can't help using them, so it's best to understand them. If you understand how we use mental models, then you can use them. And that's the active view. So the passive view is knowing that they're there and not being hamstrung, thinking the world must be the way it is, but then taking the active view, which is what other models could I have, and how can I use them to solve my problem or to achieve my goal? Or to not be so miserable, or to be happier. So the next video is going to cover the model. So the model is my model for the human emotional system that I try to make it useful for leadership. So again, you're going to see this model, you're going to say a lot of parts of it, you're going to say, I don't get that, that's wrong, I don't agree with that. My point is not to say I'm right. My point is to give you something useful. So it's a model, it's not supposed to be right, just useful for a purpose. And what purpose? a couple things. One is to be able to be communicated, and the other is to be able to be useful in leadership contexts. So I tried to balance complexity with comprehensiveness. My goal was to make it as comprehensive as I could without being so complex that it was hard to use, or on the flip side, being simple enough to understand and learn quickly and use easily without throwing out too much. So that's what's going to come, is the model, which is a particular model for the human emotional system, useful for leading others. So thank you very much.